fun little empathy game that I've been playing all my life, really, but for the past year in a really concentrated, organized, systematic, rigorous way. And the game works like this: to put myself in front of someone, and by someone I mean just about anyone that I can have the time to get to know in some sort of semi-comprehensive way. It doesn't have to be someone that I've known for years and years. It could be someone that I've known just for a few minutes. The real deal is me being able to see what is most invisible, I guess is the word. That isn't really appropriate. Every one of us, each one of us, this is a characteristic that I will wager is universal to human beings, but is certainly ubiquitous, very common, is this conviction that what is most admirable about us, what is most worthy of being noted, admired, praised, exalted, emulated, what is most admirable in each one of us is invisible to all the others. This is a conviction that we have, an interior conviction. And it's not true. It is not true. On the one hand, your virtues are not invisible to other people, and on the other hand, most disturbingly, your vices are not invisible to other people. But it seems that way to you. It seems that way to everyone, or almost everyone, because we want for people to be aware of our inner goodness, and it seems so much the opposite. It seems that what they're aware of is only the superficial, only the meaningless, only the immaterial, only the essentially fungible. The things about us that are least admirable and least remarkable are the ones that people take the most notice of, so it seems. And the things that are most admirable and most remarkable, they seem never to notice at all. And so the game that I've been playing this game all my life, but I've been playing it consistently, rigorously for the past year, since I finished 9 Empathies, is to do the opposite. To sit down in front of some not suspecting individual and tell him exactly what he wants most to hear from other people. Tell him what he never hears from other people and is desperate to hear back from them. Tell him how I see the best in him in the way that he sees the best in him, and tell him what it is in detail. Scare the shit out of people because they think I'm reading their mail. I make quite a few people cry or tear up because that visibility is something that they've always wanted, they've always yearned for and never gotten. I'm a spectacularly lousy friend, so I really shouldn't indulge this kind of intimacy with people because I intend to do it very briefly, very temporarily, and then flit away like the hummingbird I am. But I am willing to give people that gift, this gift that they have yearned for and almost never gotten from other people. I'm willing to give them that gift one-on-one for a few minutes before I flit away. And it's really nothing, very small. And it's really everything. It's really enormous. It's really huge. Frankly, everyone should do that for everyone else. This is the gift we withhold from everyone. We wonder why it is that everyone withholds this gift from us, and yet here we are withholding it from everyone else. That there is a degree to which we treat almost everyone else as an untouchable. In 9 Empathies, I talk about empathy for the untouchable and how it plays out in real life, how it eventuates, the language we use around here. Reality occurs in events. If you're not talking about how reality occurs in events, you're probably not talking about reality. You're talking about something you wish for instead. How the empathy for the untouchable, the disempathy for the untouchable eventuates in real life. And you can work analogically from that to see how your disempathy for the untouchable plays itself out in your empathy for virtually everyone that you're involved with, that your spouse, your children, the people with whom you feel a storgic love, you may be more open, more transparent, more available, more vulnerable, more exposed. But for most people, you are living in a very hidden state, maybe not necessarily a false state. You may not be living behind a disguise, but you are being very careful, very guarded with what you show of yourself, and at the same time, you're dismayed that no one can see you. How stupid is that? How ass backward is that? And of course, I live in an ass backward universe as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at the universe appropriately, correctly. I am facing in the right direction, and I see a garden, a paradise, a realm of infinite opportunity, infinite pleasure, infinite satisfaction, infinite realization of every goal you could ever imagine. Bounteous, unbelievably rich environment for you to make your dreams real, whatever they are. That's the world I see. That's the universe I see. And everyone else sees a dump in one way or another, sees a cesspit, a trash pit, sees nothing but risk and failure. I was thinking about this morning, and I was telling someone about riding my bike, and I've talked about this at church before. I like to ride my bike. I haven't been able to do it lately, and I'm dying to. Someday soon I'll be able to again. But I dance on my bike. That's what I do. I've talked about it. I ride around on my bike, no hands, arms up in the air, the headphones on, listening to Jack White radio on Pandora, really rocking it out and really putting a lot of movement into my body. It's empathy for the machine. This is chapter 8, I think, chapter 7 maybe of 9 empathies. It's empathy for the machine. Feeling the road, feeling the wind, feeling the pitch and yaw that I'm putting on my bike with my pedaling and with my rocking out my upper body, throwing my body this way and knowing how to counter enough to keep from pitching over that way and yet not counter so much that I pitch over the other way. And it's empathy for the machine. It's surfing. It's like surfing on a bike. I'll never surf. I crushed my hip a long time ago. I will never surf. I probably never would have done it anyway, but I know I never will now. But I can surf on my bike, and it is very much a surfing experience because the empathy for the machine that it requires is total. I'm not doing anything else. I am riding my bike and not doing anything else. And I love that. I love things like that. I love things where I can be so totally completely committed that I cannot possibly, it's not just that I'm not doing anything else, I cannot possibly do anything else. If I become distracted for even a little fraction of a second, I will wipe out and I will be massively injured. I almost never wipe out, once or twice a year, but I do. Almost never. And anyway, I was telling this person about riding the bike and what I got out of it, and all he could talk about was the risk of injury, that I should pick some other kind of exercise because the risk of injury was much too high. I was like, I'm not doing this for exercise. I am not doing this for exercise. And I'm not really even doing it for dancing, but if I can't dance, I'm not going to do it. There's nothing that I'm going to do that doesn't entail dancing. But I'm not doing it for exercise, and if I pick something else to do with my time that bores me lifeless, I'm not going to do it at all. I'm doing this for fun. And if there is no fun to be had from it, I'm not going to do it at all. And it's all just more of the same ass backwards thinking, that as long as all you can see are risks and failures and losses and doubts and miseries and wounds and scars, sorrows and regrets, if that's all you can see when you look out at the world, you're looking at the world ass backwards. And the substance, the form of looking at the world ass backwards, I think comes about from inverted ethics and inverted moral philosophy. And I think all moral philosophies except mine are inverted in this way. They are all externalized ethics. They are all attempts to find out in the universe, out in the world of experience, the world of other people, to find external rules of conduct. So you know how to guide your behavior. This is fundamental to my philosophy as discussed in Man Alive. You're in this all alone. You are in this all alone. The exclusive locality of introspective consciousness means that no one can share your introspective experience. You cannot share anyone else's introspective experience. Every abstraction that you entertain in the thinking brain, you entertain alone. You acquired that abstraction on your own, even if some other person made the initial discovery and transmitted it to you in father tongue in some form of notation systems. Even if you learned it from a book, nevertheless you learned it all alone. And if you did not learn it all alone in here, you don't know it. And if you want proof of that, just take yourself to the math class that you bombed out of and put yourself 2/3 of the way through the book and grab a problem and solve it and prove your work. And if you can't prove your work, you don't know what you're talking about. You're in this all alone. Your choices you make all alone. That you make your choices by free will, but that free will is external, is exclusively local to your thinking brain. You do not share it with anyone else. Even if you pretend to surrender your agency to someone else, nevertheless, you are exclusively self-controlled. Exclusively, no other controller, self-controlled, controlled by your ego, by yourself, by your self-abstracted idea of who you are, what you do, what you never do. This is the exclusive sole motivation of your life, and you must do it all alone. And accordingly, the only question that actually matters in philosophy is, what should I do? Everything else in philosophy is filling in the map for the sake of filling in the map. If a moral philosophy cannot reliably advise you as to what you should and should not do, it is useless, and every other detail on the map is accordingly also useless. And if the moral philosophy, like mine, tells you how to achieve the most and the best of your one unique, irreplaceable human life, if that moral philosophy succeeds in helping you thrive, then it doesn't matter what else is detailed on the map. Your behavior is governed from the inside out. Your choices occur from the inside out. There is no alternative to this. There is no way to govern your behavior from the outside. And practically speaking, any moral, philosophical advice you happen to reap from the world outside your mind is only useful to the extent that you internalize it, understand it thoroughly and appropriately, and execute it properly. Other people cannot tell you what to do, not me either. No one can tell you what to do. People can offer you useful advice for how to go about managing your internal resources, but you must manage them yourself exclusively internally with no outside help whatever. You're in this all alone. And so any advice that other people give you, including me, ultimately boils down to rules of thumb, good ideas for maintaining the appropriate mental frame necessary to manage a human life efficiently, effectively, flourishing in a state of mental and emotional satisfaction, happiness, eudaimonia, thriving. To the extent that anyone outside your mind can do that for you, all they can do is offer you ways of thinking about your circumstances such that you will arrive at the most admirable, most satisfying choices, but you still have to make your choices all alone. I feel like I should read the Gods of the Copybook headings today. This is Rudyard Kipling. I've been reading Robert A. Heinlein this week, and whenever I read Heinlein, which is almost never, but whenever I read Heinlein, I immediately want to go read Kipling instead. Heinlein is fun reading, but it's kind of Kipling for dummies. The Gods of the Copybook headings is about those kinds of rules of thumb, those laws of nature that come back to bite you in the ass again and again and again. It's very much worth your while. As are my rules of thumb, particularly the 7 rules of the Church of Splendor, which you can find on your own. I may put them in the post when I post this homily. But I've been thinking about this in the context of the complaints that people have when things go wrong, because the complaints are always external. It's always looking for that factor out there in the world, generally speaking, that other person, that bad guy, that villain who went out of his way to frustrate my objectives. But even if it's not a villain, it's some kind of external characteristic that people are looking for, when almost always the things that go wrong with your life are as the result of your own poor choices. The most valuable thing you can do when you find yourself having wiped out on your bike and you're down in the dirt and you've got scabs on your elbows and scabs on your knees and you're looking at the blood dripping down your shin. The most important thing to do is not to figure out what went wrong in the world outside your mind, but to figure out what you did wrong. What did I do wrong? What should I have done better? What can I have learned from this experience so that I can recognize this fact pattern when it presents itself again and avoid having wiped out, avoid wiping out the next time? How can I do that? And the only way to do that, practically speaking, is to look at your ethics from the inside out, to discover what you did wrong, the mistakes that you made. There can be bad people. Very rare. Very rare. There can be people who are very different from you and who make their choices differently from you. And this is why I talk about the DISC assessment all the time, that if you learn to DISC my way, people will cease to surprise you and they will cease to frustrate you for the most part, because you will understand the motivations behind what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing, and what it means that they're doing what they're doing, and why it has nothing, really practically speaking, to do with you. They are pursuing their own values and objectives much as you are pursuing your own values and objectives, and to the extent that your values and objectives coincide, and to the extent that you can reach a reasonable agreement to cooperate, you will cooperate, and where you miss those contingencies, you will fail to cooperate, and to regard that failure as being some kind of evidence of malevolence, either of the universe or of those other people, is almost always an error. Either you managed your resources inappropriately and therefore couldn't achieve a meeting of the minds, or it's simply a matter that you could not come to an agreement. You are not the right people to be cooperating. You need to find other people to cooperate with. It is not a matter of malevolence. It almost never is. It may well be a matter of error on your part in the way that you made your choices, the way that you made your decisions, or it may simply be a broken machine, a machine that can never be made to work properly. Move on. But meanwhile, in those circumstances where you're dealing with other people, I think the best tack that you can take is to assume the best. Assume the best about those other people. Assume the best about the circumstances that you find yourself in. And don't draw the other conclusion until you have good, reliable evidence that there is something more than benevolent circumstances. To assume that there's anything other than benevolence that doesn't quite mesh is a mistake, I think. That if you assume, and this happens all the time, number one, you introduce all kinds of suspicions within your own mind, and number two, the people around you will tend to reinforce those suspicions because they like you and they don't know the other person. It's not that they don't like the other person, they don't know the other person, but in not knowing the other person, they can invent all kinds of reasons for not liking that person, for having suspicions or doubts about that person's motivation when there's absolutely no basis in evidence for drawing these kind of conclusions. I think this is a mistake. This is a mistake. Assume the best about the other people and operate on the assumption that you're trying hard to make things work that may not, in fact, be workable. And that all you can do in that circumstance is move on and make the best of the next situation. As above, I think you should be working actively all the time. And again, using the disking that you're doing of other people all the time, you should be actively working to see that invisible good. To see that good in them that they think nobody else can see. And to tell them what it is. To tell them specifically what it is that you think makes them remarkable, admirable, worth doing business with, worth interacting, transacting with. What brought you to the table? Name it. Why not? And that comes to the next link in the chain for me. You should be quarrying virtue from the people that you're dealing with all the time. You should be quarrying virtue. That obviously your display should be affectionate, your responses should be affectionate, you should assume the best about them and assume that any disagreements or conflicts or speed bumps that you're hitting are resulting from good intentions and good motives on their part that are just happen to be different from yours. But you should also be actively quarrying their virtues. When people do what you want done, you should praise them to the skies. When they give you what you want, you should pay them for it, and if it's appropriate, you should tip them for it. You should offer them some kind of an over and above payment, even if that's simply in the form of your enthusiastic response to the zeal that they brought, the quality that they brought, the passion that they brought to the work, you should note all of those things and praise them to the skies. Why? Because you want more of them. That's why. You want more of that from the people that you're doing business with. They're giving you what you want. Give them what they want. Give them more of what they want. And my attitude as above is start out by giving them what they want. Give them what no one else gives them. Give them that recognition of those interior virtues that they think no one else can see. See them. Speak up about them. Praise them. Cherish them. You'll get more. You'll see more of it. You want to catch the other guy doing something right. Catch your kid doing something right. Catch your dog doing something right. When you catch the people that you transact with doing something right, draw attention to it. Sing its praises. And do it in the way that is most appropriate to that person's disc profile. So if an incandescent person is really delivering the goods for you, then make your praise public. If it's a sociable person, you might do it privately, or you might do it with something that shows that you invested time in thinking about what that person might like best. But particularly as people are different from you in the disc system, you should be quarrying their virtues, because their virtues make you whole. You think you're whole and they're broken. They think they're whole and you're broken. Everybody thinks everybody else is broken, and everybody wonders why nobody can see how well I perform. I think they're all broken, and yet they can't see how well I perform. Well, they all think I'm broken. Everybody thinks everybody else is broken, because everybody's looking at everybody else for failing to be me, for failing to be you. The defects that you see in other people are their failures to do the things that you do remarkably well, and the defects that they see in you are your failures to do the things that they do remarkably well. And if you recognize that no one does everything remarkably well, then you acknowledge that you need other people to do well those things that you do poorly. And that's why you should be aware of where other people are in the disc system, because they're different from you. I'll have more to say about this someday. The whole idea of externalizing ethics, I think, is hugely important, so I may write something about it at some point or another. Frankly, as soon as you understand what I have to say about this, as soon as you understand that you have to stop looking at philosophy as being something that exists out there in the outside world and somehow or another manages to penetrate your brain, as soon as you learn to think about it the other way, that all of human consciousness necessarily emanates from the inside of your thinking brain outward. Every bit of human consciousness that you will ever experience in your life occurs that way, that you see the secondary consequences of human consciousness in other people's thinking brains. You can see that in their actions and their behavior. But the only way you can experience this from the inside is inside your own mind. The only place where the choices that govern your behavior are made is inside your own mind, by reference to your abstract understanding of the world outside, but deployed by the free will that exists in here and nowhere else. And accordingly, if you learn to think about ethics from the inside out, you will proceed as I do. When things go wrong, what will matter to you most is what you yourself did wrong. When you're dealing with other people, you will go out of your way to assume the best in what they're doing, to assume benevolence, until you have sound, evidence-based reasons to conclude that there was a malevolent intent. And if you quarry the virtues of the people that you deal with, if you quarry for their virtues, draw attention to them and help them quarry for more virtues themselves, everything around you will work better. All of the social machines that you find yourself involved with will work better. And then ultimately, for those social machines that cannot be made to work, cultivate indifference and press on regardless. Your job is to pursue your good, to pursue your values, to achieve your happiness. Your job is to flourish in your own life from the inside out, which means you must flourish first as a self, And only then can you flourish in your marriage. Only then can you flourish in your family. Only then can your family flourish as a consequence of your flourishing. But everything of ethics proceeds from the inside out, and to approach it any other way is ass backwards. This is the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swan. I am so glad you could join me, and I will see you next week.